It has been a rough go in Death Valley, both in the South and in the East Coast, let's be real. But we're going to focus on the Clemson Tigers. They'll be hosting Florida State in desperate need of a win. Dabo's squad just 3-5 this year, the worst 8-game start by an AP preseason top 5 team in the last 40 years. Of course, they're coming off that 1-point loss to Duke. And Sweeney is feeling those frustrations ahead of kickoff this weekend. Here's what he had to say after that Duke loss.
This is, obviously an incredibly disappointing time. This is a low of lows. I'm sitting in there with Tim Beret just coming back there, and he said it, and I agree with him. I feel like I'm in 2010 all over again.
Let's show you 2010 and how it shaped up. Of course, they finished that year 6-7. That was Dabo's last year with a losing record, but he's had 4 ACC losses 3 other times previously. Of course, in 2008, that wasn't Dabo, but he was promoted then after a losing record. And of course, in 2023, where they finished 9-4 overall. Certainly some expectations. Maybe Dabo Sweeney's on the hot seat. Let's talk about it with our college football experts, Richard Johnson, Brad Crawford, back with us to break this one down. Richard, we have heard the calls on social media for Sweeney's job. I think the conversation has been who else is going to replace him. But when you look at the product that he's put out to this point, it's Clemson's worst 8-game start, as I mentioned, since 1998. That year, they fired the head coach, who was Tommy West, after that season. Knowing what we know, knowing what we've seen in the past, how warm, then, Richard, is the seat truly for Dabo Sweeney?
I don't know if Dabo's seat specifically is all that hot. What I do think is very hot is multiple members of the personnel staff behind the scenes for Clemson. And I say that because Clemson, as we know, did not take many players from the transfer portal. Only took 3, including one of the first scholarship defensive players they'd ever taken in the transfer portal era in Will Helt, who honestly is one of their best defensive players on this team. Because they didn't take that many players from the portal, that would imply that they felt that their roster wasn't just good, it was great. And it was able to compete for both an ACC championship like they did last year and a national championship with the college football playoff. I think a lot of us agreed with him in the national media. I thought their defensive line was going to be the best on paper in the country, for instance. I thought Kate Klubnik was going to take another step. Avion Terrell, for instance, that cornerback is a good player for them, and they had good linebackers coming into the season. But they just missed on their evaluation and their self-scouting. They absolutely failed in that regard. And so then it compounds itself when you don't take any portal pieces. So for me, if I'm Dabo Sweeney, I think I look internally and I say, how can I mix up how we develop our players? How can I mix up how we scout our players? And how do I mix up how we go and try to acquire players in the transfer portal?
Yeah, I've been told for weeks that at the end of this season, after that South Carolina game, whether Dabo Sweeney and the Tigers make bowl season or not, there's going to be mass staff changes there in Death Valley. I don't know if it's Tom Allen at defensive coordinator. Maybe you change some things with offensive, defensive lines. But despite having talent in all of those position groups this season, Clemson is not playing up to its standard. Like Richard mentioned, we thought this was a preseason top 5 team that was going to get to the playoff, and it just hasn't happened. And then, oh, by the way, Dabo has shown some arrogance after all of these losses. He keeps bringing up yesteryear in Death Valley and what happened when we won 2 national championships. Well, that's a long time ago right now for Tigers fans and those who are pumping money into this program. So, as noted, I don't think he's on the hot seat, but there's going to be some mass coaching staff changes here in a few weeks.
We call that gaslighting, Brad. That's what Dabo Sweeney is doing in all of those post games, is he's gaslighting everybody because he wants you to remember the good old days and how it worked back then. But Brad, to that point, the conversation surrounding Dabo, at least over the last few years when college football has really transformed into what we know it today, his biggest knock, as both of you noted, is that he refuses to sort of step into the future of college football. We have kind of let it sweep under the rug because they've gotten okay results over the last few years. But I guess, Brad, at what point has Clemson maybe reached a pinnacle with Dabo where they're kind of fed up with his antics? I know his job still feels safe, but as far as the antics go, how does the school feel about him?
I think they certainly have. I mean, Dabo Sweeney, in the face of his AD after losing to Clemson, who was a few feet away from him, said, "You can fire me now if you want to." That is pure arrogance from a guy that just years ago they invested $10 million a year over essentially a lifetime contract to make sure he stuck around for a long time. And to me, I know the Tigers won the ACC last season and went 10-4 and made the playoff, but they lost to 4 of the 5 best teams they played. That's not normal at Clemson. They're used to beating the Alabamas and Notre Dames and Ohio States in the playoff, and it just has not happened. You see there, they have not beaten a Power 5 conference opponent at home since the middle of the 2024 season. This is a program just 2 or 3 years ago had won 40 consecutive games at home over a 5-year stretch. So Clemson fans want to win, and it feels like Dabo's best years are way behind him. My only question is, I wonder what Tyler from Spartanburg is feeling like this season, knowing that Clemson could potentially miss bowl eligibility.
Tyler from Spartanburg is kicking the feet up and saying, I told you so, Brad. Come on now. Tyler told you so. Look, I think you look at the last few years, and it's like you take one block after another out of the Jenga tower that was Clemson's dominance that peaked right around 2018-2020 era when it was really humming, when they had back-to-back elite quarterbacks with Deshaun Watson and then Trevor Lawrence. And then you take those guys away, and it's just slowly but surely different things have started to happen. And yeah, I think this is rock bottom for Clemson right now, because now you're losing to Duke at home, you're losing to Georgia Tech, you're losing to teams within your league that you hung your hat on. At the end of the day, Clemson did not lose within its league. Clemson was solid in the ACC. They played for an ACC championship just last year and won an ACC championship just last year. And so there are things that you could hang your hat on, and slowly but surely over the years, those things have just become few and far between, and you've got a Clemson program that's just like everybody else.
I did try to find an update on Tyler from Spartanburg. The only thing that comes up, of course, is that iconic call from 2023 when he called in to Dabo when they were 4-4 at the time, and he wanted things to get better. I will also add, and again, I'm just looking at this on the computer, Dabo does not take calls anymore on that radio show. So there's a big impact there. So we will leave the Clemson Tigers there. Of course, they're looking for a win, looking to snap a 2-game losing streak. On the other side of this one, guys, Florida State is not excused from these conversations as well, too. We've heard the whispers of a potential coaching change with Mike Norvell. Brad, how do you gauge Norvell's job security? What does this weekend, I guess, how much impact will that have on that conversation?
From the outside of this program, looking in, Haley, I think Mike Norvell is still employed because it would take almost $100 million to fire him, get rid of his current coaching staff, and bring in a new staff for 2026. You know, I know he got the seal of approval from his AD a few weeks ago, but the cost, it's just not cost effective to get rid of Mike Norvell, not to mention that since there's so many other quality top 15-ish Power 5 jobs available right now, if Florida State were to move on from its current regime, then they would be down the totem pole for some of these available hires. So I don't know. I don't think getting to a bowl game is necessarily going to salvage this season for Florida State. But they looked pretty good against Wake Forest last week, and that was coming off 4 consecutive losses. They were hanging their heads after that Stanford game, so that was a good bounce back. And then if they beat Clemson on the road here in Week 11, that's obviously a good start to a final finish. So I don't know, though. 2025 is down the tubes. It feels like that win over Alabama was just so long ago.
Right? What do you think, Richard?
Yeah, Brad, you mentioned that vote of confidence statement by Athletic Director Michael Alford. To me, that was a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, please win some games coming home, because we don't want to jump in to this coaching carousel, this wild and crazy coaching carousel that has Florida, Auburn, and Penn State and LSU already on it. They don't want to jump into it if they don't have to. But look, we talked about Dabo Swinney and a lack of portaling. Well, Florida State kind of has the opposite issue, where they went in the portal and sort of missed on the players 2 years in a row that they wanted out of the portal, and failed to develop the high school players that they had on their roster. You mix those two things together, and you have a Florida State team that is, again, falling so far short of expectations. Yeah, as Brad said, that Florida State Alabama game seems like it was years ago at this point in time, decades ago.
It just felt like a different team, too. I mean, when Florida State and Tommy Castellanos came out and really put the work in on that Alabama team, everyone was like, oh, this is different. This feels different. But it just seems like, Richard, that Mike Norvell cannot figure out how to win if it is not Jordan Travis behind center. We have this stat, 9-21 in his career at Florida State without Jordan Travis as his quarterback. I know that quarterback or records aren't necessarily a quarterback stat, but it's hard to kind of disassociate the two when it's so egregious on one side for Mike Norvell. Is there a missing piece that he's missing here when it comes to that quarterback conversation, Richard?
Well, I think when you talk about the Florida State-Alabama game in week 1, it was just a situation of Alabama was not ready for a brand new offense that Florida State had in that game, a quarterback-centric run game, and Alabama was not itself on its own P's and Q's, especially on offense. You've seen what has happened over the last 10-ish weeks since both of those teams have played. You've seen both of their trajectories go in wildly different directions. So it was just a one-week thing. After a whole preseason of planning, you were able to come into a week 1 game without a preseason, and you were able to kind of spring it on Alabama in a big home environment. Yeah, I do think Florida State is going to have to try to find a way to fix it at the quarterback position, but it's about more than just a quarterback position. You know, yes, quarterback wins and losses seem to be the thing that we always talk about, but at the end of the day, football is a team game, and there have to be pieces around, whether it's DJ Uiagalelei or Jordan Travis, that have to play up to standard.
Yeah, the quarterbacks can only throw the ball and hand the ball off to whoever is on the field. Need a game pick from both of you. Brad, I'll come to you first. Who wins this one?
I'm going Clemson 23-20. I do not see the Tigers losing for a 7th straight time against power competition, especially in the ACC here. Did y'all see Dabo Swinney's sideline tirade in the first half last week?
How could we miss it?
I think he lit a fire. I know, right? I mean, it went viral quickly. I think he lights a fire under that secondary. They don't give up a ton of explosive plays to Tommy Castellanos in that passing game, and Clemson wins a tight game Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I also think Clemson wins. I think that at the end of the day, Clemson's defense is able to hold down that QB-centric run game that Florida State has and is able to win the game.
First time these two are meeting as unranked opponents since 2010. It sounds like we are in for a real treat between these two. Richard, Brad, appreciate the time and the insight. Enjoy the college football this weekend. And for those of you at home who are looking for just a little bit more, make sure you head on over to our college football YouTube page as we get set for, like I said, an exciting matchup in the ACC.